Lakota stories tell that the first people did not begin on the plains, but below the earth in the Spirit Lodge. When they climbed out too soon and began to die in a world they did not understand, the Creator turned them into the first buffalo. In Tungkan Típi, the Spirit Lodge, the first people lived in an underground world of safety and abundance, sheltered from storms and extremes beneath the living body of Maka, the earth. Their lodges stood close together in the dim light of that underworld, and life there was already ordered and guided, not chaotic. The people were led by Thokahe, the first, a leader who kept them in that protected underground world and taught them how to live there. In the later tellings, he is often named as the first to emerge, but here he is, still the one who holds everyone back from a world they do not yet understand. The people know there is another realm above them, a surface world with sky and open ground, but they have never gone there. The opening to that world is a small, specific place, a single mouth where the underworld meets the air above. In Lakota stories, that opening is identified with Wind Cave Onia Oshoka, where the earth breathes in the Black Hills. There, a narrow passageway leads up to a circle of bright light, and wind constantly moves in and out of a small hole in the rock, the earth literally inhaling and exhaling. That is the gateway between the safe, enclosed world below and the harsh, open world above. Behind this underworld and the opening into the light stands an older layer of creation, the work of beings who existed before humans. At the deepest level is Wakјáŋ Tjanka, the great mystery or great spirit, the overarching sacred presence that is not one sky god among many, but the holy reality from which all other powers flow. From this sacred mystery comes Inyan, rock, the first being out of which the physical world unfolds. In one core creation thread, Inyan pours out his own blue blood to create water and the conditions for life. As he empties himself, his power runs out into the world, and he shrivels and hardens, becoming stone. From this act come Maka, the earth, as a living being, and the solid land on which later stories unfold. Maka is not passive ground. When conditions on her surface are wrong, she complains and pushes for the creation of other beings to restore balance. Other organizing powers appear from this early creation. Takuskanskin is sacred motion, associated with the blue vault overhead and the rules that govern how things move. In Fao, dawn marks the first coming of light. Why the sun brings warmth, strength, and the red color of life. Han or Hang, primordial darkness, is the heavy obscurity that covered everything at first. Hangwi, the moon, becomes the face of night, carrying cycles and constancy across the sky. Together, these beings arrange day and night, the balance of light and dark, and the alternation of heat and cold. The emergence story begins with a trickster. One day, a wolf sent by Iktómi appears at the opening between worlds, standing at the lip of Onia Oshoka and calling down to the people below with promises of open plains, herds of game, bright light, and space to move. At that time, only animals and spirits cast out from the spirit world for their transgressions lived in the upper world. Among them were Iktómi, the spider, and Anogite. Neither humans nor buffalo had yet come onto the earth. Anogite filled a leather bag with things from the upper world, decorated buckskin clothing, sweet berries, and dried meat. Iktómi took the pack gave it to the wolf, and sent him down through the twisting passages of Wind Cave to the people below. When the wolf entered the spirit lodge, the people gathered around him and stared at what he carried. The women touched the soft buckskin and admired the clothing. Others tasted meat for the first time and found it rich and irresistible. The berries were sweet. Everything in the pack seemed to come from a better world. Then the wolf promised that there was more to be found above. Stirred by curiosity and desire, the people prepared to follow him toward the surface. Tokahei warned the people to stay where they were. The world below was safe and abundant, while the world above was unknown. But the things brought down from the earth stirred desire among them: the soft buckskin, the berries, the taste of meat, and the promise of more. Some ignored his warning and began to climb. When they emerged onto the surface of Maka, they saw what had lured them upward: open grasslands, animals moving across the horizon, and a sky with no roof above it. At first, the new world looked like a gift, but the people quickly discovered that they did not yet know the proper way to live there. They hunted clumsily, taking the wrong animals and wasting meat. They broke taboos whose rules they had never learned. They did not understand the winds, the storms, or the moods of this exposed land. Without the shield of the underworld, they were exposed to heat, cold, thunder, and starvation. Storms hammered their camp. Hunger gnawed at them. The same powers that shaped day and night now pressed against them directly. Below the earth, the rest of the people still waited in safety. As conditions worsened, people began to die. Then the Creator punished those who had come up too soon by turning them into the first buffalo herd. Their bodies and spirits became four-legged relatives who would feed those who came after. From that moment on, buffalo and humans were not separate beings, but the same people, divided by form and bound by origin. The emergence story is anchored in specific land. For the Lakota, the Black Hills, Paha, Sapa, are not just a mountain range, but the heart of everything that is, the spiritual and geographic center of their world. Peaks, caves, and buttes, they are saturated with stories, fasting sites, places of vision quests, and points where humans met spirits. Each site has particular events attached to it. Holy Land is not an empty label, but a network of remembered encounters. Wind Cave, Oniya, Oshoka sits within this landscape. The constant flow of air in and out of its small opening is read as the breath of the earth itself. Lakota see the Wind Cave as the place where Tokahei and the first people emerged into daylight. The opening is the exact throat through which underworld and surface connect. Other beings are written into the land in equally concrete ways. Untehi, the horned water being, is said in Lame Deer's account to have fought against people and other powers in the early days of the world, unleashing a flood that drowned nearly everyone. As the waters rose, only a single hill near what is now Pipestone remained above the surface, and then even that disappeared under the waves. The dead people's blood gathered and gelled into a great red mass that became the stone of the Pipestone quarry. That quarry is understood as a grave of those ancient ones, which is why the stone for the Chanunpa, the sacred pipe, is taken from there with ceremony. In that same story, Untehi is turned to stone. Her back and bones are said to lie in the eroded ridges and spines of the Badlands. When someone looks across that broken country, they are not only seeing erosion, they are looking at the fossilized body of a water monster whose conflict reshaped the world. The scarred land is a permanent reminder that the world can be flooded and remade when beings like Untehi act. The Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, together the Očeti Šakówiŋ, or Seven Council Fires, share one sacred universe populated by Wakǎŋ, holy powers, or spirits. This is not a closed pantheon with clean hierarchies, like a list of Greek gods. It is a living network of beings, forces, and presences. At the top level stands Wakjáŋ Tjanka, the Great Mystery or Great Spirit, the overarching sacred presence from which other powers flow. Winds, thunder, stars, animals, and places are understood as manifestations or expressions of this sacred reality, not rival deities competing with one another. The core assumption is relational. Everything in the universe is alive and related. Humans, animals, waters, winds, stars, and named spirits all belong to one interlocking family of power. Human beings are not at the top of the order. They are among the weaker and younger relatives. Older beings, such as buffalo, thunder, rock, and certain animals, are taken to be wiser and more dangerous. This outlook underlies Lakota ideas about humility, omens, and taboos in daily life. Within that sacred world, several beings stand out again and again in Lakota creation stories and ceremonies. Wakjáŋ Tjanka is the great mystery behind all things. Inyan, rock, is the first being, and Maka, earth, is the living world formed from that first sacrifice. Takuskanskan is sacred motion, the animating force that keeps the world in movement. We, the sun, Hangwi, the moon, and Hang, primordial darkness, belong to the cosmic order of light, night, and time. Together, these powers define the frame in which every other spirit and force operates. Thunder, wind, and the four directions are not background weather. They are persons and powers that speak, punish, and grant visions. Wakíŋyaŋ, the thunder beings, are storm and lightning powers, seen as gigantic birds or as a great thunderbird. When storms roll in over the plains with lightning walking across the sky and thunder cracking, Lakota stories treat this as the movement and voice of Wakíŋyaŋ. They are tied to war, visions, and life-changing dreams. A person who dreams of Wakíŋyaŋ may become Heyoka. Heyoka, the sacred clowns, carry thunder power in their bodies and act through paradox. They do things backwards, riding horses facing the tails, saying, "What a cold day," while everyone else is roasting, pouring water on themselves, and complaining of dryness. Their behavior is sacred inversion, using humor, shock, and contradiction to humble people and handle dangerous power. Thate, wind, is the father of the winds of the four directions. His sons, the four winds or Wani, are Okaga, the south wind of warmth, fertility, and growth, Wiyohyampa or Yampa, the east wind of beginnings, dawn, and daytime, Wiyopeyata, the west wind of endings, evening, and change, and Yata, the north wind of cold, hardship, and endurance. These winds govern weather, health, and fertility across the plains, and they shape the quarters of camp and rite. The order of the camp is repeated in the stars. Wakjáŋ, star spirits, are not distant points of light, but beings tied to constellations and to the fixed star in the north. Some star clusters mirror the layout of the people's camp and its sacred arrangements. Anpituwi, the sun, is one power among others used to mark ceremony, season, and movement. The Milky Way is a spirit road, a path for souls across the night sky. The same four directions and sacred circle that structure the camp on Earth are repeated overhead. Sacred order exists above and below. Buffalo Tatanka is not only an animal species, but a sacred being and a spirit of plenty. Tatanka means food, shelter, clothing, tools, and generosity at once. The emergence myth already established that buffalo are transformed relatives. That makes their death not just practical, but spiritual. White buffalo calf woman, Wakļáŋ, sometimes identified with Wape, is a holy woman spirit shared across Lakota and related traditions. She appears to the people at a time of need and brings the Chaŋnungpa, the sacred pipe, along with core rites and teachings. In the standard account, two hunters meet her on the plains. One approaches her with lust and is destroyed, while the other treats her with reverence and is sent back to his people with a message. She comes to the camp, brings the pipe, and teaches the proper way to pray and to live in balance with Wakļáŋ Tļáŋka and with the buffalo. She is tied to peace, prayer, and buffalo's generosity. The birth of a white buffalo calf is read as a sign that the bond between the people, the buffalo, and the teachings she brought is being renewed. The 7 sacred rites are linked to the pipe she delivers: Inipi, Hangblecheyapi, Wiwangyang Wachipi, Hunka, Ishnathi Awichalawangpi, Thapa Wankayayapi, and Nagi Gluhapi. Through them, cosmology enters ritual life. Not every being in the cosmology is orderly or benevolent. Some exist to test, disrupt, or threaten. Iktómi, the spider trickster, is one of the most prominent. In some accounts, he is a fallen form of K'esa, a wisdom spirit stripped of that role for his troublemaking ways. Sometimes he is also called a son of Inyan. In story after story, Iktómi is clever but self-defeating, greedy, impatient, lustful, and trapped by his own schemes. His tales show what happens when judgment fails. Unktehi or Unktehila, the horned water beings, belong to another dangerous order. They are tied to floods, violent waters, and the power to contaminate or purify. In some strands of tradition, they also teach ceremonial body painting, linking them directly to war paint. Unktehila appears in some tellings as a related serpent being, sometimes treated as the female counterpart of Unktehi. Other beings fill out the dangerous edges of the world. Wambli, eagle, is tied to vision, counsels, and war leadership. Bear spirits carry healing, force, and wisdom. Kea, turtle, is linked to protection and healing. Zuzeka, snake, belongs to hidden things and lies. Hihankara, the owl maker, stands at the entrance to the Milky Way and judges souls. These are the edges of the cosmology where things go wrong. An owl at night may be more than a bird. A sudden rise in water may be more than weather. A failure of judgment may be Iktómi already at work. Finally, there are powers and presences that describe what becomes of the dead and what moves unseen among the living. Wanagi are the spirits of the dead, human souls that continue to exist after the body is gone. Animal spirits endure as well, especially those of close companions, such as dogs and horses, who may remain bound to their human relatives after death. Wanya is breath, spirit, and life force closely tied to wind. When a person breathes, that force moves through them. When the wind moves over the land, it belongs to that same unseen field of power. In the Lakota sacred world, dreams, wind, death, and spirit contact all belong to the same living order. A Lakota camp was arranged in a great circle, echoing the sacred hoop, with everything alive understood as belonging inside that ring of kinship. The council fire burned at the center, and the opening in the circle faced east, so that the first light of the sun entered directly into the life of the camp. Around the circle, tioshpaye, extended family groups, held assigned sections so that the social map of the band could be read by walking the perimeter. The layout mirrored the four directions and the ordered cosmos overhead. The Lakota teepee used a 3-pole tripod foundation rather than the 4-pole system favored by some neighboring nations. Many Lakota say that the 3 main poles represent the morning star, the evening star, and the north star, while the remaining 7 poles stand for 7 Lakota values. The door of the lodge faced east to greet the rising sun, with the rear braced against the prevailing west winds. Women owned the teepee, chose its location, built it, and took it down. Men mainly painted the exterior with scenes of war deeds, visions, or other sacred designs. If a woman wanted a man out, she could place his belongings outside the lodge, and that was the end of the matter. During construction, the poles were wrapped 4 times, marking the 4 stages of life and the 4 seasons. Before horses, teepees were smaller, sized to what people and dogs could haul. After the horse became central to Lakota life, lodges expanded dramatically and moved from camp to camp on horse-drawn travois. Within that camp world, women controlled the household economy. They processed food, prepared hides, made clothing, and organized the space of the lodge. Fine hide work was a visible mark of skill and status. Buffalo was also preserved as wasna, a dense travel food of dried meat, fat, and sometimes berries, similar to what English sources call pemmican, valued both in daily life and in ceremony. Men carried the outward burdens of hunting, warfare, scouting, diplomacy, and camp protection, and the outside of the teepee often became a public record of their visions, coups, and deeds. The buffalo hunt was tightly structured and did not begin simply because animals were nearby. First, a Wakļáŋ, a holy man, needed to receive a vision confirming that the time was right. Once that sign came, the council gathered, lit the pipe, and decided when and how the hunt would unfold. The hunt was a sacred commitment, not a casual choice. Before the riders moved, ceremonies to call the buffalo were performed. A medicine man summoned the herds through songs, dances, and prayer, asking the Buffalo Nation to come close and offer themselves. A painted buffalo head or skull was often carried at the front of the party as a focus for offerings and petitions. Individual hunters marked their arrows so that kills could be identified afterward. On horseback, hunters used several methods. In the surround, riders spread out around part of the herd and gradually tightened the ring until they were close enough to shoot. In the chase, they rode beside running animals at full gallop, sometimes so near they could touch the buffalo's hide with their knees as they loosed arrows at point-blank range. Older methods, such as buffalo jumps and impounds, also existed, but mounted hunting dominated the horse era. After the herd fell, the work did not end. Butchering was itself a ritual act carried out with prayer and protocol. Because buffalo were understood as transformed kin, their bodies were treated with both efficiency and reverence. The horse, Šuŋgwakļáŋ, sacred or powerful dog, transformed Lakota life. Hunts ranged farther, teepees grew larger as horse-drawn travois replaced dog teams, and wealth and status came to be measured in horses as well as in other goods. Warfare changed with them. Mounted parties could strike faster, travel farther, and escape more easily. Horses were not treated as mere livestock, but as powerful beings woven into Lakota life, and in war, They were painted with the same symbols of protection and power carried by their riders. War paint on the plains was not casual decoration. Among the Lakota, it was a form of living prayer and spiritual armor, prepared and applied with ceremony before battle or other dangerous undertakings. Wakỳáŋ might paint a warrior while singing, so that prayer moved into the pigment and then onto the body. Painting was itself a transfer of power and intention. The process began by smearing the body with buffalo fat or bear grease so the pigment would hold. Color was then applied with fingers, sticks, sharpened bones, or a porous buffalo bone that held the paint well against sweat, wind, and dust. Colors carried specific meanings. Red signified life, sacred blood, courage, and success in battle or the hunt. Black marked battle readiness, coups, and victorious return, and was tied to the powers of wind, water, lightning, and thunder. Yellow represented the sun, growth, endurance, and spiritual energy. White marked mourning and purity, and could also be used by scouts invoking the stealth and perception of the wolf. Blue signaled the sky and a strong spiritual connection. Black elk called it especially sacred. Green was linked to endurance, healing, and the earth. Specific symbols added further meaning. A handprint showed hand-to-hand combat. Small dots like hailstones called on protection from hail and storms and were linked to Wakíŋyaŋ, the thunder beings. A jagged lightning bolt marked speed and thunder power. A circle around the eye suggested foresight. Animal figures represented spirit helpers revealed in vision. Crossed arrows were a direct emblem of war. Members of the Očeti, Lakota warriors who enforced order in camp, on the hunt, and in war also wore distinct face markings that showed rank and role. A war party marshal bore 2 black stripes on the right cheek. A camp marshal wore a single black stripe from the eye to the jaw. A ceremonial marshal marked his role with a red parallel stripe. People in camp could read these signs at a glance. Eagle feathers stood at the top of the plains honor system. For the Lakota, the eagle, Wang flew closest to Wakjanŋ Tjanka and carried prayers upward on its wings, so its feathers embodied bravery, holiness, and sacred power. Feathers were not taken or bought casually. They were awarded by elders or leaders for specific acts. Each feather could be cut, notched, painted, or otherwise marked to record the deed it stood for, turning a man's hair or headdress into a visible record of his life. Different styles and placements carried distinct meanings. An upright eagle feather in the scalp block marked a first honor for striking an unwounded enemy in battle. A horizontal feather marked the second honor, being first to strike an already fallen enemy. Feathers dyed red showed that the wearer had been wounded in battle. Black-tipped tail feathers recorded war honors more generally. Eagle plumes, the small, downy feathers, could be given to women for embodying important values or for especially fine work, and they were also tied into a baby's hair during naming ceremonies. When a man had earned enough feathers, his closest male relatives and friends bound them together into a war bonnet. Because each feather already carried a story, the headdress became a record of courage and service, not a generic status symbol. Protocol around feathers was strict. If an eagle feather fell to the ground during a dance, a special ceremony had to be performed before it was picked up. Feathers also adorned the sacred pipe, tying the eagle directly to Wakjanŋ Tjanka in ceremony. They were often kept visible in the home as reminders of the responsibilities they carried. The feather system linked directly to counting coup. The highest honor in combat was not killing an enemy, but getting close enough to touch him by hand, weapon, or coup stick, and escaping unharmed. After battle, warriors recounted each coup before the people, and feathers were awarded in line with those oral records. Many men carried decorated coup sticks, often willow rods adorned with feathers, to turn such acts of nerve into permanent marks on their bodies and gear. On the open plains, smoke signals could send short messages across long distances. A small fire on high ground was fed with damp grass or green branches to make thick white smoke, then covered and uncovered to create coated puffs. These signals worked best in open country and could be relayed from ridge to ridge, but they were used for brief warnings or alerts, not for complex speech. Winter counts, Waniatu Wowapi, formed a deeper record of Lakota memory. Each year, from the first snow of one winter to the first snow of the next, was marked by a single image chosen by elders and kept by a designated count keeper. That image stood for the most memorable event of the year: a battle, a hard winter, a disease, a treaty, a great hunt, or a strange sign in the sky. During winter storytelling season, the keeper used those images to recite the history of the people across generations. One of the most famous entries is "The Year the Stars Fell," marking the 1833 meteor storm that blazed across the sky. Other years might be remembered as the year the smallpox came, the year the snow was deep, or the year the people starved. This was the world a young Lakota once lived in. A world where the earth breathed at Wind Cave, where buffalo were kin, where thunder moved as a living power across the plains, where paint was armor, where feathers had to be earned, and where each winter was remembered by a single name. Camp, hunt, prayer, and war all belonged to one sacred order, alive under the sky and written across the land.